Mason, it's great to have you. I've talked with you before, but I wanted to kind of introduce you to the listeners here. And um, Mason is the founder of Scrappy ABM, and we've talked a number of times before. But for our listeners, can you give kind of the high level view of Scrappy ABM and maybe how, in particular, it would help uh, agencies?
Absolutely. First, thank you for having me. I remember our first introduction was we were both marketers at a marketing agency, which is just like such a fun role. So I love the fact that you're building this show because I just think it's so necessary in the agency space because so many marketing founders like are so focused on delivering for their client and then they just live in like this constant feast or famine lifestyle of like pipeline's full, I can rest, but then I'm stressed because I'm over capacity and then like I work on all the things and then I have no pipeline. So like I'm excited to dig and hopefully help levelize some of those feast or famine type experiences by creating some regular practices like Scrappy ABM. So excited to dig in the super high level of like what Scrappy ABM is. If you know ABM, there's often a lot of tech that's associated. So a lot of people think that ABM is just like really, really fancy advertising with a really expensive tech platform. And I think the true definition of account-based marketing that I've stolen from a former employer is a B2B growth strategy that aligns marketing and sales around a set of shared target accounts. So if you think about that, B2B growth strategy. So it's not a marketing, it's not a sales strategy. It's how do we grow this business? It is exclusive to B2B. The only concept that I've heard around account-based marketing in like a B2C context or a direct-to-consumer context would be potentially going after specifically super high net worth individuals. So like prime example, not most consumers cannot buy a multi-million-dollar yacht, but that would not be account-based marketing. So if you're thinking about it in a B2C context, this is probably not going to be an episode for you. I'm so sorry. And then from there, again, thinking B2B growth strategy that aligns marketing and sales, it is ensuring that from beginning to end, sales and marketing are on the same page, thinking through how do we go after these specific accounts. And again, it's around a set of shared target accounts. So we know who the right accounts are. We know from beginning to end, these are the people we're trying to go after. They're our best fit customers. It's not just sales coming with like the Fortune 50 list to a Series A startup and saying like, these are our target accounts. Like it's unlikely you're going to close those accounts. So I actually have often reframed the sales list that's like the dream 50 into like the reality 50. Like who could we actually go get? So sales and marketing on the same page. And what I love about that specific definition is it has no involvement from technology. It is very specific to what are the channels, what are the tactics, what are the things that we can do that get us in front of our target accounts that actually build a relationship, make meaningful connections, and show specific value that actually helps them further their own business. So some of my most successful plays are getting super involved in specific marketing communities and making lots of educational content within those communities. I'm a huge fan of going on podcasts like this because depending on the podcast that I go on and the topic and the listenership of that show, I can actually see my target accounts may mention shows that they're listening to. So if I can get on that podcast, now my target accounts are listening to those kinds of shows. So like you don't think about that as an account-based marketing strategy because you're like, well, you're just going on a podcast. But again, how can I get in front of my right fit customers in the channels that they are actively living? And that doesn't necessarily have to require technology or a big budget.
Awesome. Well, so you mentioned, instead of the dream 50, thinking more in terms of like a reality 50, and then breaking that down into like, where are the places that they're hanging out? Do you have a particular um, strategy that you use to go about figuring out, is it just like you're interviewing uh, some of the people that are in that target segment and trying to, as a result, infer that like, well, if these ideal clients that I have tend to be hanging out in these communities or listening to these podcasts, then there's a good chance that there's similar uh, adjacent companies that are also listening to those or participating in those.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I found specifically in B2B is the industry continues to get smaller and smaller. The players know each other. They're often friends on a texting basis, if we're being entirely honest. Like, as you get to a certain executive level, there's just fewer and fewer executives. Like, there's only so many CROs that work at SaaS sales tech companies. They likely all know each other and they may be competitive, but they're also kind of friendly. So again, working through that process of, okay, if I see, again, CRO, sales tech, I'm trying to break into their account, I see them mention as an example that they are absolutely in love with the Rev Genius or the Pavilion or the Peak community. And again, they just love this community. Or they add it to their LinkedIn job experience. Like, you can filter by like Hype Cycle, Rev Genius, Peak, Pavilion, because people put it in their job description. So like, that's a community that they make publicly known. I'm involved in this place. So if you think about that from a reach perspective, how much is it to join Pavilion a year? It's not necessarily cheap. It might be $6,000 a year. But if all of your target accounts are hanging out in that place, $6,000 a year, again, a year, to have a smaller opportunity or to have a larger opportunity to reach a smaller group of people, because there's a gate. It's not just LinkedIn. This is a private community of specific respected individuals. If you can get into that community, awesome. So that's one way to think about it. It's just like, are they talking about it online? Are they sharing it publicly? And then the other thing is, yes, in those conversations, one of my favorite things to do is then just kind of networking with people. And a lot of my networking is specifically tied back to, these are the kind of companies that I want to work with. I say things, hey, I run a business that actually does podcasting. So we have a podcast services arm, and I love to listen to new shows to kind of hear the new kinds of things that people are doing with their shows. Are there any podcasts you're listening to? So I've made it contextual. So it's not just like, hey, what podcasts are you listening to, so that I can find out where my audience is hanging out? But it's like, you're the right kind of customer that I want to work with. Where are you hanging out? What are you listening to? And then again, I can accomplish two things. One, I can try to go on that show and actually share some thought leadership and, again, raise awareness within a potential target account and an ideal audience. And the other thing is, I may actually learn something new, like, which is awesome. So anyway, that's a thought process.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Have you ended up using Scrappy ABM to help grow Scrappy ABM? Can you tell any stories around that?
It's really funny. I actually am not running an account-based marketing strategy because, based on the stage of my company, it does not make sense yet. So I can dig into that. Because right now, as I think through go-to-market maturity, Sangram's book, I don't know if you're familiar with Sangram, he wrote a book called Move. And in that book, he writes the 3 stages of go-to-market maturity. And the first stage is problem market fit. So do we solve a viable enough problem that we can actually make money? And are enough people interested in the problem that we solve that it validates actually building a business around it? For me, I am in problem market fit. And I think I have it. Like, I think there's enough people that in 6 months, we've generated $500,000 in revenue. So like, I think we actually have served a viable problem and found a viable problem. The question now is actually the delivery mechanism for solving that problem. So again, has Scrappy ABM perfected the process in which we actually go to market for the delivery side on our clients in a repeatable and scalable way? Full transparency, I'm 6 months in. I have not delivered that in a scalable way. We deliver, we solve the problem, but we're in the process currently of like implementing project management software and creating like repeatable process documentation for everything that we do so that we can scale it. At which point I would say that we are in product market fit. So the product that we sell, sales activation plays, ABM pilot programs, podcasting, those products, those services solve the problem for the market in a way that can be replicated and scaled. At which point, that is when I think you should move into building an account-based marketing program, because you also have enough reps to know the best fit kinds of customers. Right now, I'm 6 months in. I have a good hunch, but I literally don't have enough data. I've had 25 clients come through in that 6 month time frame. We do a lot of 30 to 45 day projects. So again, I'm now looking at, of those initial projects, who comes back around within the next 6 months and signs on for a longer term engagement because they found results from the first project. They need some time for it to run. and they want to continue their relationship. I literally don't have enough data. I haven't existed long enough to have a true picture of a lifetime value or even an annual value for a client. So I'm not going to niche down because I also have enough inbound coming in to support the continued revenue growth that I'm really focused on product development. So that's like the high level of why Scrappy ABM isn't running a Scrappy ABM program at this moment. It's something I actually anticipate running mid 2025.
Okay. No, but that makes a lot of sense though, because I mean, I think that's very relevant for a lot of agency founders as well as, they might still be in that early stage, or maybe they're kind of butting up against the kind of the ceiling there, and they're realizing, I need to do something um, like what Scrappy ABM does to kind of take things to the next level. So, but I think that's a important point you touch on there. Well, I think you had mentioned some of the programs that you would like could run with companies that you would potentially run for yourself down the road. Can you talk about those and maybe unpack them each a little bit?
Absolutely. So when it comes to an ABM program, we like to think of it first of why does ABM generally fail? And that's super optimistic. But the reality is, again, if you Google how do I build an ABM program, there's a lot of implied things that are not expressly stated in those guides around the foundations. And it's generally speaking, when you actually look up why does ABM fail, that you find the things that are the cracks in your foundation that should have been established before you tried to build the program. So the number one issue, and it's the tale as old as time, is a lack of sales and marketing alignment. And what that fundamentally means is that marketing either is just not aligned from a metric perspective. So you hear this tale, and it's always frustrating for sales of like marketing hit their MQL goal, sales did not deliver pipelines, and marketing celebrating while sales is like not celebrating. They may even have a layoff. So like that should never happen in an organization. Like we should win together, but we should also lose together. So if one side of the organization from a marketing and sales perspective is celebrating and the other one is feeling defeat, that just like is fundamentally, just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
So for ABM to work, you have to have shared key performance indicators. You have to have shared metrics of success. That doesn't mean that all of your metrics need to be the same, but there need to be some core things that you both agree and align on that are, this is how we're going to win together. So like prime example, how many marketing sourced meetings are you getting on a weekly or monthly basis? How many marketing sourced deals are anticipated to close? What is the level of influence that marketing should have on the sales pipeline? And when I say influence, I think that influence is like not the best metric for forever, but as you're building your programs, when these things take a longer time frame, I've worked with clients that had a 12 to 18 month sales cycle. So again, for
Mhm.
them, it may not be sourced, but if we can, from a marketing perspective, influence the deal to close 6 months faster, that's a huge win for that organization. So those shared metrics for success are incredibly beneficial for actually going and building a larger program. So with the sales activation play, we are focused on how do we build a specific playbook that forces marketing and sales to actually work together to book meetings on the calendar with right fit customers. So some prime examples of what a sales activation playbook could look like would be a closed loss campaign. Like how do you re-engage your deals that lost for a specific reason? How do you build specific content and collateral that speaks to the reason you lost those deals? And then how do you actually get all of that information in front of those lost deals, partnering with sales to actually drive them back into a pipeline?
Yeah.
And again, if you built that in an automated fashion, that it resurfaces those accounts on a quarterly basis, and then you created a KPI that is marketing and sales will partner on a closed loss campaign on a quarterly basis to re-engage 20% of lost deals from 6 months previously. And again, you look at how many deals that is. You now have not fully automated, but a program that automates the list segmentation, the surfacing of those accounts, and maybe even like the triggering from a marketing perspective of like we trigger our ads, we trigger the sequence for our sales team to go outbound to start every quarter. And you now have this playbook that just kind of runs always on that re-engages and converts 20% back into pipeline. So again, that's where I recommend a lot of people start. because it's not going and building this massive net new program. It's using largely existing data. You can largely probably repurpose a lot of your content. It's a couple of basic workflows within your existing CRM to do the segmentation within the lists, and then building an outbound sequence and just making sure that all of that triggers and aligns back to a specific campaign. So you have relatively easy tracking. So it's like a 30 to 45 day project, not a 3 to 6 month ABM program.
Well, and the audience is more likely to be warm to begin with, so there's a better chance of results. You're not starting from scratch in the marketing funnel, so to speak. So you mentioned that type. Are there other types? I mean, I think you'd mentioned in the passing that like podcasting was maybe one. Can you unpack some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly rattle off kind of the other sales activation plays that are very common for every B2B company, of like somebody that views your pricing page and your scheduled call page and your product pages. Like, there are free tools that you can use that de-anonymize your website traffic that then help you understand who to go after. So that's a playbook that's really successful. Missed meetings. So somebody books a call, they never actually sit on the meeting. Like, how are you re-engaging those? And then customer win back programs. Like, those are 4 playbooks that essentially, if you ran those 4 playbooks every quarter, you could likely, again, just based on your current deal volume, you probably see another 2-3 deals actually close based on those 3 to 4 playbooks. And it's not a super heavy lift in the grand scheme of things. And think about how much 2 to 3 deals a quarter changes your life from a revenue perspective, depending on your deal size. And so those are just some things to think through. And then the last thought on the sales activation side, it's just like looking at your current flow of data. Every organization is different. So like I've shared some templatized approaches, but some of the most successful playbooks are going to be very unique and nuanced to your specific business. So just understanding your flow of data, identifying where is an action that somebody takes that then indicates to us they would be a good fit for sales to reach out to. It's not an MQL score. It's not a lead score. It's an actual specific tangible action that somebody has taken that we can then follow up on in a triggered, repeatable way. So that sales activation plays. As it relates to podcasting, again, we're building a podcast here right now. Like, we're actively talking through it. And like, David, you shot me a message, and I think it was like one message. And then I said almost immediately, yes, I will join your show. And that's pretty consistent. Like, if you think about the concept of building a podcast, if you use it as a new business development tool, which it's becoming a more common and more popular approach, but it's something in which you look at who are our best fit potential customers, what is something they would enjoy talking about, and how do I reach out to them and get them onto a show where I highlight them and show how awesome they are and really boost up their confidence, and just like, what is the young terminology would be, like, I gas them up and like I just make sure that they feel amazing and they have a really positive experience talking and enjoying and engaging me and my brand. And again, the booking rate on average for a podcast is like 80%. So again, if you asked 10 people, there's a very high likelihood that you are going to get 8 of those people. The caveat to that is, like, and I hate to put it this way, but like within your same social capital hierarchy, it is highly unlikely I will ever get like a Mark Cuban or a Damon John on my podcast. Like, not even, I don't even know how. But there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that like have a good following on LinkedIn. I could ask probably most of them that have a really solid following, and 8 out of 10 of them would say yes. So again, that's a way to think through it. And the whole purpose is just, how do I build an actual meaningful relationship? So it's not an immediate, like, because please don't do this. It's happened to me actually a number of times recently. Like, I'll be invited onto a show. It's like an hour-long booking. We'll record for 20 minutes and they'll pitch me for 40 on their product. And it's just like really uncomfortable. And it never works. Like, you gave me a bait and switch. So don't do that, but build an actual
Well, it's funny that you
relationship.
say that, because I was
Please
actually,
don't.
no, I'm just kidding. No,
Um,
I've been on the receiving end of a similar sort of thing where it's like, oh, you have this thing that you're selling to guests, and yeah, it you just kind of feel icky, and yeah, totally 100%. I think the relationship piece. I mean, I think I posted something about this not too long ago where just even like networking meetings without any specific goal in mind can actually be a really, really great thing. It's like,
Hmm.
hey, we can talk shop about the same industry and maybe some of the challenges, and like, let me learn more about what you do. I'll tell you more about what I do. There's no pressure for either one of us to sell anything to either one. Sometimes it's not even a good fit, but it's like, maybe something that comes out of that is like, oh, I know somebody who you should talk with, or
Hmm.
um, you know, we don't need that right now, but we might a year from now, things like that. And it's like, cool. If you're not trying to close somebody, I think it's gonna be a really, really powerful tool.
Yeah. I mean, again, we've worked with about 25 clients at this point, 2 of which have been referrals. So again, I think through that of like, these are people that had no idea who I was previously, that then came because somebody else in their network referred me. They learned about what we offered and they said, this is actually a good fit. And then they move forward. And that's in 6 months of existing. So like, that's ballpark 10% of our revenue, or 10% of our client base is referrals. And I will be very transparent that like a lot of our pipeline right now is referrals. Obviously, people that know me personally will close faster than a referral at our current stage, but like there's a huge opportunity, and most of those came through when I went to go launch Scrappy ABM. I scheduled 50 conversations to run through our approach and our different service offerings before I launched publicly, to say like, does this make sense? Like, if you were in the market, would you buy this? If you know people in the market, would you tell them about it? Like, is what I'm doing even in the realm of solving the problem? And they're like, yeah. So I love the approach of networking calls, because at the end of the day, one, B2B is largely relationship based. And as much as we try to make perfect CAC calculations, like, if you build good relationships, this is how you end up selling $100,000 deals. Because if you buy something that's $100,000 and you get it wrong, you lose your job.
Yeah,
Like, it's not a pair of shoes where you can return it to a store. Like, people lose their jobs over some of the purchasing decisions in B2B. So the more you can build great relationships and build a high level of trust, the more likely they are to move forward with you.
100%. Yeah, I definitely have seen that a lot on the agency side. You're selling something that's a lot more intangible. So it really comes down to, do you trust the person who's selling it to you?
Mhm.
Have they shown authority, credibility, all that, whether it's case studies or somebody vouching for you. Um, it's really a trust-based thing. So the more you can, build relationships, or, um, communicate your expertise through different mediums, the better. Podcast, whatever.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I know one other thing, I mean, you're pretty active uh, on LinkedIn. Would you consider that an ABM play, or is that something that you'd maybe kind of put in a different category?
LinkedIn was the first Scrappy ABM program. So the the inception of Scrappy ABM as a concept, I didn't call it this at the time, but it was about 3 or 4 years ago. I worked as a marketing director at an agency. We were an ABM agency, and I was given the instruction of, we need to build an ABM program for our business because we want to show off what we do to our clients. But you have no ABM platform. You have like $50 a month that you can use for gifting. You've got a data enrichment platform, but it's through a partnership, so we got it for free, really. And you've got our HubSpot CRM. So like, can you do something? So
More
we
bricks,
ended
less
up,
straw.
pretty much. Um, so the initial Scrappy ABM program was me connecting with our target accounts on LinkedIn. And what I did is I had 2 screens. So one screen had our target account list, and then the other screen was LinkedIn. And I would literally copy and paste the name over into LinkedIn, and I click connect, and I did 100 times a week. And that was like the first version. That's actually how I built my initial following. It was all target accounts. Like, it was just people that accept my connection request, and I went and just like posted about account-based marketing. And through that playbook, and I wish it was more complicated. Like, I wish there was some specific secrets, and like, it's just that simple of like, connect with my people that I wanted to work with. They said yes. I posted on LinkedIn every day for like years, and eventually that created this weird little thing where like, I'm like really, really important to like 2,000 people.
But
Like,
that's
I'm
what you
not
want.
important. I'm not important to the rest of the world, but like to 2,000 people, I have like actual people that are like, I follow your content every day. It's like a highlight of my day. I learned so much from you. And that's what I needed. Like I just wanted the really important to like a very small group of people, which was awesome. So for me, that was the initial ABM strategy that after doing that for like a year and a half, so that plus podcast, we were able to source about $1 million in revenue through LinkedIn plus podcast. And the other thing is like, it was 9 months in. So like, it's not, you do this for like a month and you're like, I didn't see anything. Yeah. It's going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of trust is just the consistency to show up, that people see you enough to know that you're not a flash in the pan. You are actually someone that has got some level of credibility because you've shown up long enough that people trust you. So it was about 9 months in, 8 to 9 months in, that we started seeing actual significant levels of inbound come to us that said, like, I followed Mason Cosby on LinkedIn for 4 months or 6 months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we started to source a lot of pipeline. So yeah, the initial ABM program is connecting with our right fit customers and creating content that helps them win the day today and showcases our authority on the topic so that when they are ready, we are top of mind.
I like that. Do you have any tips for agency folks who maybe, when it comes to that content creation piece? I know we mentioned, podcasting is a type of content creation, but are there any sort of, is there any wisdom you'd share around? I don't know. I talk to people who they're like, I just don't know what to write on LinkedIn. They're like a founder of an agency, and they're like, I need you to tell me what I'm supposed to write. Have you heard that
Yeah,
sort of thing?
all the time. I'll be really honest, like right now, it's something that I'm in the process of working through, because in the past 3 years when I was in-house working as a marketer, trying to sell to marketers or sales leaders, I just talked about like, how do you grow revenue? A lot of what I used to say, and I still believe in this for a lot of people, is what I refer to as learning in public. Like I just very actively shared, these are things that I am learning right now, because I know if I'm learning it right now, it's probably something that somebody else has not yet learned, and it's probably going to be helpful to them. So
Mm-hmm.
like, especially when I was working in an agency dedicated to building the marketing of that agency, I just shared literally every single day. This is what I learned today. This is what I accomplished today. And like, this is pretty neat. And a great example of that is a guy named Ryan Gunn. He works as the marketing or director of demand gen for a larger HubSpot operations agency. And he just literally shares incredible workflows every single day and like how to build stuff at HubSpot. And he gets like 200 likes, he gets like 80 comments. He goes like semi-viral every day because he's really, really important to a very small group of people that have started to rely on him for information and knowledge. So I'd actually say, like, right now, Ryan Gunn is doing it better than I am, because I, now being a founder and running my own business, like, I remember I was talking with a marketer earlier today and I showed them like the profit and loss statement for the organization and like how to work through financial projections. And like I have never done this. Like I do not, this is just so foreign. So like I'm shifting
Mm-hmm.
from that of like learning in public to I'm creating a lot of thought leadership and a lot of content through going on podcasts, through interviewing people. And like, I just repurpose anything that I say anywhere on a show to be LinkedIn content, because you get a transcript or you can ask for a transcript and you can take a portion of the transcript and you can go put that into Chat GPT, and not for the purpose of like having Chat GPT create content for you, but for reformatting and for making sense of it.
Yeah.
Because I just went on a decently long ramble and I can put it into Chat GPT and say, can you make this content, this section, a great LinkedIn post for this audience and focus in on this topic? And it will get you 80% of the way there. It's not going to be perfect. You'll still have to do a little bit of editing, but you go from what do I talk about to I have a transcript. This transcript can probably get me 10 posts. Chat GPT will get me 80% of the way there. And then I like will go publish this on a post on LinkedIn. So again, my thought would then be, if you're trying to figure out what to say, go on 2 podcasts a month, and that will give you Monday through Friday LinkedIn content every single month for the rest of your career. So just shoot to get on 2 podcasts a month.
Yeah. I like that. I feel like some of these things, it's really just a matter of taking some really simple concepts and just being consistent with actually executing them.
Yes. Like I I've talked with some really, really, really smart ABMers, and they're like, "We love what you're doing." And I like show them under the hood. They're like, "Wait, that's all?" I'm like, "Yes, that's it." Because I would say 80% of organizations right now, when it comes to ABM, don't have the right foundation in place. So I'm
Hmm.
not focused on the most scalable ABM program. I'm focused on like, how do you do the fundamentals right? How do you build? Again, everybody talks about the concept of crawl, walk, run. There's not another service provider that is dedicated to the crawl space. It's like, how do you build the actual crawl of an ABM program or a good revenue generating program that gets the fundamentals down? You have repeatability and predictability within your program, and then you can start to scale it up.
Yeah, 100%. This is awesome. Well, I feel like this is maybe a good place to pivot and just talk about. I mean, can you tell our audience, like, would you be able to work with agencies, and if so, like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, there's actually a point very early in Scrappy ABM that we almost went ahead and niched down specifically into being the marketing agency for marketing agencies, because the Scrappy ABM approach is just really, really effective for specific agencies that know this is the audience that I serve. Like, this is exactly what we do for this specific audience. And personally, like, the Scrappy ABM concept was largely built when I was in house at an agency running the agency's marketing. So I'll tell you exactly what I would say of if you are building this. First of all, I'm actually going to give like different advice than I would normally give on just ABM in general, but more like agency specific, building it right. I met with a ClickUp consultant and project management consultant to help build the operational components around managing everything that we do from a delivery perspective earlier this week. So we're like, again, we're 6 months in. And he said, we don't meet with any agency that is this early. They normally experience the pain of losing a lot of clients because they can't effectively manage their capacity. So, like, a large part of ABM is actually building a great reputation and brand within a very specific subset of people. So, first, before you focus in on these are our people, this is who we serve, dedicated. If you don't have the right product and you can't deliver effectively for that group of people on a consistent and repeatable basis, do not run ABM. Like, focus on building a repeatable product and service. Because once you transition into doing ABM, if you do it right, you should get a very repeatable revenue engine within a specific audience that likely all knows each other. And if you don't do well for that audience, word will spread. So, like,
Yeah,
if you're an agency considering this, focus first on delivery for the best fit customers and then build the right marketing program.
I like that. That's great advice. Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for sharing all this. I'd love to, give you the floor to share anything you'd like to offer the listeners today.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're an agency, we do work with agencies. I would say actually probably 20% of our client portfolio are agencies right now. Um, but again, it's truly focusing on the fundamentals of how do I have a CRM that is our source of truth that actually we manage a sales pipeline through, and we're getting out a spreadsheet so we can actually capture repeatable data and then use that data to create repeatable playbooks on how we continue to generate new revenue. So, like, you can go build a free HubSpot instance. I'm on HubSpot Starter. It's like $600 a year, and I have all of my data captured, and I have from day one. It's like, doing those things will be the game changer for you in the long term, so that you, as a quick tangent, if you're an agency founder, inevitably you likely don't want to be owned by the business. So in order to not be owned by the business, you have to have great processes and great operations so that you can elevate out of being in the business and start actually running the business. So that's focus number one. And if you are at that point and you've got a solid revenue process and you're really looking for how do I take this to the next level, I highly recommend checking out the Scrappy ABM podcast, because we just break down playbooks on how to do that every single week. There's 2 episodes a week. And it's really digging into the specifics around these are scrappy things that you can do on low budgets that have high impact. I personally, through Scrappy ABM, in the methodology over the past 3 years, have generated about $4.5 million in revenue at a 15x ROI. So again, I'm not talking your venture capital SaaS massive budgets. I'm talking like bootstrapping 4.5 million in 3 years. That is something that I think every agency would want. So if that is helpful for you, go check out the podcast.
Awesome. And if people want to keep in touch with you after this, what's the best way for them to find you?
Best place would be LinkedIn. I am there every day. I try not to wear out my welcome, but I might. So if you, there's a lot of posts. Also, essentially, I talk exclusively about ABM, and I have a really cute 5-month-old. So you'll probably see some photos of her. So if you like babies and account-based marketing, I am probably the only person on LinkedIn that is dedicated to those 2 things.
That Venn diagram.
Yeah, it's a real small audience there. And then the other thing is just, again, checking out the website. We are in the process of providing documentation for a lot of our playbooks that we actually will use internally. We're going to make those publicly accessible. I don't know exactly when. We're in the process of doing all of that. But if you're trying to find these playbooks that I reference, they will be on the Scrappy ABM website.
Awesome. Well, Mason, thanks so much for coming on the show, and hope we can be in touch.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.